is that it's all freaking lies. And as far as the deal with Ward Roney, I don't know if you remember, when he walked out, he belittled me. He was not sitting on the board. I was a citizen right there. And he called me, "You're just a dirty little man." And it kind of pissed me off. And the only thing I did is I just knelt down and I asked him, I said, "You want to see how little I am?" He's the one that confronted me. So, you come up with this BS, you know.
This is BS, this is straight from the minutes. The minutes that you told me, in fact, right after, you said, "I never said that." You can't prove that. That's the way you resolve it.
What are you talking about?
Say,
What's the minutes?
what do you mean, what's the minutes? Those are the minutes.
Minutes from where?
The meeting where you said, read it. And you said, what you said right before the vote.
Yeah, I admit it. I know.
Yeah, it was an attempt to influence the vote in that meeting.
It was an attempt. I just reminded him. I said, "Hey, you know, there's
You shouldn't be reminding anybody of anything.
Yeah.
It was in a vote, and you leaned over to him and said, "Be careful how you vote. You know, you got to."
I didn't say be careful how you vote. I just mentioned to him, "Hey, we got an
It's
election
an
coming up.
attempt to intimidate.
We got an
Okay.
election." Yeah. Well,
We're going to go to, we need a second on Anthony's motion. I'll second it.
I have a motion on the floor by Director Calvin to censure Director Owen Davis regarding conduct on May 23rd, 2024 Director Board meeting. Second by Director Smiley. We'll have a vote. Director Calvin?
Yes.
Director Gregory?
Yes.
Director Davis?
no.
Director Smiley?
Yes.
That says 3-1, 1 absent.
All right, this time we'll adjourn the Salmon Hill Community Services District Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Time is 8:15.
Time.
Okay, board action item, strategy for the implementation of the Pasol's Groundwater Sustainability Plan, GSP, discussion only. Direction may be provided to legal or general manager for future action.
So the last meeting, right, we had a brief discussion related, well, it was a little more than brief, but discussion regarding the future implementation of the groundwater sustainability plan for the Paso Basin. The board was encouraged to review that plan and was provided information by Mr. Dodds regarding the requirements of that plan, which are pretty loose at this point because most of it is prophylactic. There are no deadlines on the projects other than the wastewater treatment facility upgrade project. Everything else is meant to address basin issues and sustainability issues before the year 2040. Hopefully you guys have looked at that information. We want to continue the discussion to try to gauge really this board's appetite for continued cooperation with the other agencies and how far that this board wants to extend that. Not just regard to funding, but also what that cooperation looks like. As we've discussed before, the MOU with the KDCC was really meant to be temporary and has really exceeded its useful life. There needs to be more to it. There's to be actual cooperation amongst the GSAs and the most manageable cooperation would be through a joint powers authority. However, this GSA can also choose to implement its portion, its responsibilities under the GSP on its own. Because there is one GSP for the whole basin though, that is something that it makes sense to continue to cooperate on so that you do not have to create your own plan. That would cost a lot of money and potentially be difficult to separate out. You would still need to some degree, cooperate on that plan as it is one big basin. And there aren't, while you have boundaries, what you do is still affecting other portions of the basin, other portions of the basin are going to affect you. So what we laid out in the staff report is the first initial question of, does this GSA want to continue coordination of the Paso Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan? And if so, what is the appetite for coordinating that effort through some kind of joint powers authority?
Thank you. Dr. Collins, you have a comment on that?
Yes, thank you. I think honestly, the GSP the cooperative committee has outlived its usefulness. There are issues that have been brought up, very valid issues that are brought up by Director Baker and also by Mr. Graywell. Mr. Graywell, I've sat with you through many meetings and you've brought a lot of valid points about the issues involving the Big Water District. And those people were there all those years ago, they're still there. That being said, sometimes they say, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer as a way to keep track, because if we, turn our backs onto these water districts, I don't know what they will do. One question I have thought about is, why is the Los Cabos RC involved? And if we do move forward with the JPA, I would probably want to see them as a non-voting member or provide some sort of technical assistance, since they are supposed to be also, water conservation experts over this basin.
Who is that?
The Los Cabos Resource Conservation District. They cover the basin, though. They cover the whole North County. That's why Devin Best was on the Blue Ribbon Committee for all those years.
They are not
I know that, which is why I would say non-voting to provide technical assistance.
I'm not aware of any involvement of them in any.
No, they haven't been. They haven't since we've had this cooperative committee. And we have these people, these water districts, as Mr. Graywell's brought up a valid point, who don't know what they're doing and seem to just keep throwing whatever out the window.
Well, the Los Cabos RCD has, although they're not like intimately involved in what the PHCC does, they are involved with Paso. I have had conversations with them on things that we can do.
Yes.
And partner with them. I believe that they're currently partnering with the county on some conservation efforts. So that is something that can be looked at going forward if the JP is formed. Those kind of alliances don't necessarily have to be, like a non-voting member type alliance. It could be just that we're going to prioritize working with additional agencies to make our end goal. Part of what, Christina and I would like to get out of these meetings with you when we discuss these things is what your guys' palette is for 4 different types of governance, management, especially in the governance as far as the board is concerned. Is this board interested in having a board of 5? If the JPA is formed, a board of 5, 1 seat per agency. There's been discussion that more than 5 directors be appointed, with more going towards larger areas, particularly like the county or Shannon San Juan, where they have a bigger area. So that's something that this board needs to come to a consensus on what you would like to see. From staff level, we're going to push for what you guys expect, what you would like to see in the future. As directors of the JPA, one of the questions that came up is whether those directors should be an elected official or if they should just be anybody appointed by the GSA. Currently, it's anybody appointed by the GSA. We happen to have Mr. Baker, who's not here tonight, as the director, and I'm the alternate. So My personal preference is that the people who sit on that board should be elected so that the people that they represent had a chance to elect them. Nobody really had a chance to elect me. So it's not really, it doesn't seem as legitimate as somebody that was elected. You guys make decisions for this district. Our representative on that board should be elected by the people and make decisions on behalf of our district. So does anyone have any opinion one way or the other on the number of seats? If it's a one-for-one agency type of deal, if you guys are generally okay with a population-based or land-based number of seats.
If I may, I think I have not heard from this board yet, just to start, that it is that you guys want to enter into a joint powers authority with these other agencies. And so I think that that's really on a base level. We need to hear whether that's the direction that this GSA wants to go in, is continued cooperation through a more formal governance structure.
So what you're saying though, if we didn't, then we would be forming our own GSA? I mean, we'd have to have our own groundwater sustainability plan?
No, not necessarily. I mean, right now you have a plan, but it's going to have to be updated periodically. And you can still choose to cooperate under that plan with the other agencies, but there's going to be, I mean, these agencies are discussing pooling resources in order to maintain funding. I mean, I think the whole purpose is that they want to gain funding through a joint powers authority so that each of the entities is not bearing the costs directly out of their funds. It's the groundwater extractors that would then be bearing the cost of the sustainability plans. That's really the basis of it. And so the question is, does this district want to continue approving funding on a project-by-project basis and as things come along, and basically as you've been doing so far? Or do you want more of a structure where it's more foreseeable what the costs are going to be, the costs are more shared, and frankly, through a JPA, you would have more of an availability of grant funding and that kind of stuff as well. And do you want to sit at the table? So if this GSA doesn't join a JPA and the rest of them do, then yeah, you are kind of out on an island to some degree. I don't know if that would happen. This is all hypothetical at this point because everyone's just trying to gauge what the GSAs want to do and the extent of the cooperation that they want to engage in.
Well, as far as cost benefit, so if we go on our own, that cost is going to be more than if we were part of that joint powers.
So it's really unknown what the actual cost of the district would be. So at the very short end of it, we're still responsible for participating at some level in an annual report for the district.
So we're going to be required to.
So at a minimal level, the district still has to put together information about what the district did, if it's complying with the GSP or not. Most likely, the scenario would be that if we were on our own, that we would contract back to that JPA, assuming the other four formed a JPA. We would contract back to them or their consultant to do that report. The GSP is for the basin, not for our district. So the 5-year annual updates would be, we would be responsible for a small part of that as well. And because it doesn't involve us, our GSA will still need to work with that JPA to coordinate that effort. I don't know that the costs for those two things alone are going to cost us any less than they do right now. But we do limit ourselves by being essentially an outsider at that point to participating in the regional things that JPA might do. The one thing that the JPA would be potentially doing is they would be having a 218 where the JPA itself would be collecting rates to do those annual reports, to do 5-year updates, to do projects, to do monitoring, all the different things that are part of the JPA or the GSP right now. that JPA will be managing those things. Presumably with funds derived from a 218 or Prop 26 rate setting measure that's applied to everybody in the basin. However it ends up being applied. So this district wouldn't necessarily be paying out of pocket for something. It would be all the property owners within the basin would be paying towards that JPA and going forward. If we weren't part of that JPA, this district would still be responsible for paying for whatever that cost is for the annual report, for the GSP update, and whatever measures we took to help bring the basin into sustainability. We still, as an outside agency, we wouldn't be able to do something that would negatively affect the basin or surrounding us, and they can't really do something that's going to negatively affect the basin within the district. So, in a big picture, it doesn't really make much sense to be on our own. But the facts are really that we don't know enough to know whether it's good or bad.
Well, the problem though is that right now we're paying a percentage of whatever gets voted on. And so it just depends on what projects are going to get approved, and some of them they don't benefit us necessarily. Yes, we're part of the basin, but the basin is ginormous.
Right. And
We're way up in this corner, up in the northern section. So, and the other question is, the GSA, what is our boundary for the GSA, our GSA?
Our district. So our district boundary is our GSA boundary.
Okay, so it's pretty tight.
Right.
It's not even up on 10th Street. It's really tight. And there's no way that we would get swallowed up or anything by another GSA?
So in order for this GSA, any part of this GSA to become a part of another GSA, both we would have to relinquish that space and the receiving GSA would have to accept that space. It would have to go through LAFCO and a whole rigmarole to get there. So there is essentially zero possibility that somebody would just come take our space. That's not going to happen.
So what is the cost associated with managing our own? I realize you're not in favor of it, and I realize, but I'd like to hear some numbers of what you think. And then what is our responsibility for keeping our basin, our portion, our GSA recharged, or whatever is the terminology?
So there's essentially two cost avenues, I guess. The first cost avenue would be the actual management of our GSA. To do the work for whatever our part is for the annual report, or if we do an entirely separate annual report, for what we need to do to either adopt a new GSP or to participate in the update of the current GSP. Those costs would be fairly minimal. Our projected cost for this year for being part of the PBCC is $18,000, which is fairly minor. That's cost to the PBCC right now. We have probably, I don't know the number off the top of my head, I'm guessing somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000 in engineering time for this PBCC, for what we do right now with the PBCC. I wouldn't really anticipate that will grow. So, I mean, you could say potentially that if we were on our own, we would be in the neighborhood of maybe $30,000 to $40,000 a year. 5-year reports would be additional costs, so it might be higher. But that's not including projects. So if we were to take on a new project to create a coffer dam or to create recharge wells or anything like that, then as a standalone GSA, it would be more difficult for us to get that. As a JPA, you have a little bit more of a regional authority, so we might be on the hook for those projects in their totality. If we can't get grant funds, then we would obviously have to pay out of pocket, and those things can run into millions of dollars.
What would require us to do that though?
So you have to show that you're moving towards sustainability. So if in our basin, let's say we're seeing an average decline of a foot a year, we're not, but if we were, then we would have to do something to mitigate that average drop. There are minimum thresholds that we're trying to stay above. Once you get to those, per the GSP, there's actions that have to be taken to investigate the reason why, to make action towards fixing it. So that's, if we were to have our basin right here decline to a point where we meet our minimum threshold, then we would have to start working towards doing, things that can retain water, either create a retention pond for the river, coffer dam, recharge wells, whatever.
Right.
And so we would be on the hook for moving those forward.
So is surface water contributing to recharging?
Surface water can contribute to recharging.
Yeah.
That based on the information that I'm aware of, there's not a lot of places along the Salinas in this particular part of the county that actually have a direct recharge benefit. The closest one I believe is at the Horse Ranch Twin Rivers at their property. And bear in mind, these are all hypothetical. Nobody went out there and put a straw in the ground and checked to see where it went. But so we could do projects like that. They would most likely be projects between the district and the landowner, or those are kind of projects that I had talked about with RCD, is recharge projects that included retaining river flow to help recharge the basin that way. But for the district itself, we have a very few things that we could actually do that would actually benefit the district itself. A lot of things are going to benefit the general area, in which case we would want to partner with the county or, say, an EPC, and work with them to find something that worked for both of us, or work for a bigger area.
So that's kind of my other question, is that if we were part of that JPC, whatever the acronym is, that how much would they be wanting to spend money for something that benefits us way up here in this area?
So EPC has land that butts up to us. The county has land that butts up to us.
Yes.
So, like in the instance of a coffer dam, that could potentially be directly benefiting us, the county, and EPC. But projects like that, and this is all part of the negotiation to create the JPA and the negotiation to how fees are assessed, is projects like that, let's say it's $2 million and it's going to affect 2,000 properties. Well, that would be a negotiation between the affected GSAs to say, okay, well, these properties are going to pay for that. Or if it's a project that, really actually for some reason affects the entire basin, okay, well, we all agree we're gonna spread this over everybody. So each project would have to be looked at different, or individually rather, so that you're not charging somebody in Creston for something that's only fixing a problem in San Miguel.
Right.
And you don't want to charge San Miguel something for something that's only fixing something in Creston.
Right.
And you can't
Yeah,
legally.
you can't legally. Doesn't mean they won't try, but but like the state water project, there is, next to no chance that we'll ever directly benefit from anything that has to do with the state water project.
Right.
It just costs so much that it wouldn't really benefit us. But so the people who are in relative proximity to the state water project, to an existing turnout, let's say, could directly benefit from that and should be paying to utilize that. So again, all the projects would have to be looked at separately. They would have to be essentially negotiated for who's paying for them, how much it is, and there's a long way to go before we get there. Right now we're looking at it conceptually, You know, from my understanding, this board is the only one really talking about it. The rest of the agencies aren't really actually talking about it, other than at the staff level.
Well, for one thing, I mean, we definitely don't want to have number of seats based upon population or acres.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want that.
So, and right now we're looking for general direction,
Yeah,
not necessarily a commitment.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really good to know, should we continue to have discussions surrounding a potential JPA, right? Because if this board, if none of you want that right now, you know that, then we're just going in circles, and maybe it makes sense, you know, for when the next board comes in to bring it up to see if that changes with them, and if it doesn't, then, I mean, there we are, right? And we can keep bringing information as it develops from these other agencies of what projects might be necessary. The problem is, like Kelly said, it's all conceptual right now, because most everything under the GSP, the requirements are triggered by issues in the basin that are not currently, like, we don't have a big substance issue right now, right? But if it gets to a certain level, you have to do something about it, and it depends on what's causing that and where that's coming from. So it's really difficult to, in this moment, tell you what it's gonna cost to do any of this, or whether it's gonna come out or when it's gonna come about.
Well, that's being reactive, not proactive, so.
That's what the GSP requires, it's when it gets to a certain level, so before it becomes a major problem, right? So there's triggers of, look, we're noticing that these levels are to this amount, or let's say you get certain levels of arsenic coming out of your groundwater consistently, right? Before it's a problem, we identify that, and you need to mitigate it before it's an issue, because you're trying to keep it sustainable, rather than just band-aiding the problems as they come up.
Right, okay.
I had a couple questions, because I kind of want to piggyback off of some of the things that Director Gregory has brought up. You know, what about my concern is spillover. From my time, I remember when I seen the depletion maps at the corner of Estrella and River Road, there was a depletion that was going on right there that was spilling over into the district. At what point are we liable for that depletion when it's spilling over into our territory?
So, although that's not really part of this, I guess, but the district is really responsible for things that are going on inside the district as a GSA by itself.
Okay.
If we were causing something that was spreading out into other GSAs, then we would still be liable for what's happening based on what we're doing.
Okay.
If it's something that's happening and it's not really caused by any one action, and it's just caused because, you know, maybe there's no water there in the first place, or, you know, somebody took a bad measurement.
Sure.
There's, you know, part of what the GSP would be, or the JPA would be doing, thank you, you know, is carrying on the monitoring efforts that we're trying to get set up right now. Part of the reason a lot of things haven't been finished right now is because you have 5 different agencies trying to do the same thing, or tell one how to do something or not do something or whatever. But, you know, part of what we're supposed to be doing right now is increasing our data collection and increasing our accuracy on all of our modeling and our mapping. So, you know, where we used to have a giant red dot right there at San Lawrence Terrace well.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure, it was just a bad measurement that somebody put in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that disappeared as soon as they decided to listen. But, yeah, so we're all kind of in this together. And that's where I'm not really in favor of going at it alone, but it has to make sense. And this board has to both understand what it's doing and be behind the cause.
Right. And that also you brought up that you think that the JPA should be should be ran by elected officials in essence. I'm using the wrong term. The board should be elected officials.
The board should be people who are elected. So one of the 5 board members that we have up here should be our representative on that board.
Because one of my concerns is, And honestly, it's only because I've seen this and we've had these conversations about the way how some of the other districts are ran, is I wonder whether or not, what would be the situation if all 5 were actually professionals or stuff with technocratic, I guess we call it technocratic governance structure. So instead of having, because this board, there are some members who have concern about some board of supervisors, and then they may not like some board of supervisors making decisions for San Miguel. Would it be more beneficial for us to then advocate for a technocratic form versus Dr. Reilly, who's advocating on behalf of the county? So we take away that political conflict.
So I can tell you right now, if you had a board of 5 engineers or 5 managers or whatever that were not political beings, you would get a lot more done. But like I said earlier, that board is directing the activities of that JPA. It would be the same, it's the same as you guys telling me what direction you want to go. And, you know, although this is only my opinion, is if, you know, I live in the county GSA, but I would want somebody that I elected to be sitting there making decisions because I elected them, or they were elected by the people. You know, I would make good decisions for our GSA, and I think that if you had 5 of me up there for each GSA, that we would all make good decisions for our GSA, but we're doing it from a management level, not from, you know, I was elected by the people and I'm going to do the people's business.
One big concern with having employees on a board like that is there is a silent pressure to do things a certain way or risk your job, right? Because as soon as that they don't like what that person is doing on the board or how they're handling things, you know, potentially they could be fired and replaced with somebody else that they like. Whereas the elected officials are elected by the people. I mean, sometimes you get people appointed to boards, but it's still a, you know, at least somewhat of a democratic process where someone doesn't have to worry about their job being in danger because they're not making the right decisions or having the right discussions when they're representing people.
And those are very fair points, and I thank you for bringing those up.
Good?
Right.
Dr. Davis,
Go to public comment.
public comment?
Thank you. Great,
Permission to speak yet?
Permission to speak, thank you, sir. What your council just mentioned is what's already happening. Blaine Reilly became the alternate. Bruce Gibson kicked out the 2 electeds that are over the basin and took over because he got contributions from the other guys. The other guys were illegally formed by LAFCO, and they know it when Bruce Gibson was sitting on LAFCO. The reason you have the problems is because they're kicking the can down the road, and they only want to do projects that benefit them. I'm sure none of you have seen the minutes from the July 24th meeting of the San Juan Water District. You got 2 fake water districts that deliver no water, don't do anything, have no infrastructure, which they were required to do before they could become water districts.